Welcome to My Dream Big Club's YouTube channel. This channel is filled with a lot of inspiration and motivation to help you to continue to dream big and so that you can even dream bigger. Please remember to subscribe, like, and comment below. Enjoy this dynamic episode with Mr. Ron Johnson. Mr. Ron Johnson, how are you doing today?
I am doing fantastic. I'm doing very, very well. It's been a while since I've been able to say that wholeheartedly, but I'm very, very grateful right now. How about yourself?
I'm doing well. No, I appreciate you asking. It's always great to when we come together have these conversations. So I think those that are listening, you're in for a big treat. But Ron, we like to kick it off really and ask that question: how would others describe you as an individual?
I think it depends on if you knew me before my first business or afterwards. If you know me past post 2016, you would say that, well, I would say for both, very high energy, I think passionate with a capital P. Post Mrs. Dorsey's kitchen, I think humility might be the second one.
Okay.
before highly confident. I was with a mix of arrogance, but now learning by taking L's and being transparent about taking L's. We call them lessons, not losses. I'm always looking forward to being as vulnerable and remaining vulnerable no matter what. And that's my personal challenge. I'm not always perfect at doing it, but teaching it and sharing it with people about the power of vulnerability is something that is a huge focus for me forever. Well, until the next pivot comes up. So
Yeah.
that's been working out.
Let's talk about that though, because you mentioned that you're a person that has grown or has humbled themselves. So what happened? What happened? Like where did that come from?
Where did it come from? I would say that I think I don't even know where to start. So I ended up moving to New York after graduating, and I did corporate advertising for about 6 years, and then I found myself wanting to get into the restaurant industry, and so I did that. Started doing pop-up markets and quit my job and just went really hard at it. And I think one of the things that I learned about was the meaning of entitlement.
Mm.
I went into business with knowing I went to college. I took entrepreneurship course. Why can't I open up a business? And I think that's a healthy attitude. But the way in which I did it, a lot of the things came with entitlement that I had to learn the hard way. That entitlement to me, from in this stage of my life right now, can be a very comforting and dangerous thing to embrace, because a lot of people aren't ready for when their cheese gets moved. And that's a book called Who Moved My Cheese. When life changes, I don't know, like a pandemic in the world, a lot of people have no idea what happens when the things that they're entitled to are now gone. And so one of the things that I learned to um, absorb and accept is that I knew that I had a full conviction that all these great things are going to happen with opening my first restaurant. And along the way, all these things continue to get in the way. Anything that could go wrong did go wrong before opening my restaurant. Long-term relationship. I had my best friend. I lost, my best friend and I. We separated ways. Lawsuits. I had a puppy. My puppy died. Like, I
Wow.
had two set of contractors walk off the job on me, and fortunately enough, since I started the business doing pop-up markets and then catering, I knew how to run a business without a restaurant. So by the time all these things started happening at that time, I still knew that all I need is a folding table and electricity, and I can sell grilled cheese sandwiches. And so when I finally got the doors open, zero money in the account, like literally, I bought cheese and bread on a credit card, because I had to buy materials to build out the restaurant, because the contractors walked off the job with about 85% of it done. So my dad drove up from Cleveland, Ohio, and his friend and we finished our restaurant ourselves. I did not have any intentions on building a restaurant by hand. All right. I have video footage to prove it. Fast forward, a lot of things, even though getting the restaurant open successfully, #1 restaurant, Prospect Heights, top 100 places to eat, I
Wow.
continued to sprint through the restaurant. And what I realized is that I was fine with the pop-up markets. The money was good. All the money that I was getting from the festivals and the pop-up markets and the catering, that restaurant sucked it all up. And so while I am the only person on site, I have four other business partners at the time, but they were all in other states. And that's another thing about entitlement. I knew I could handle it on my own, but I did have the support of other friends, but none of us, I repeat, none of us were entrepreneurial. And we all agreed to have this baby together, but we didn't know what we were doing with it. And so now, ever since then, I had to accept the fact that I wasn't making the type of money that I needed to make. I was, I got the stats, but I wasn't making the money I needed to make. So I had to accept the fact that it's time to pivot. And so I had to close the restaurant. It was a tough decision to make. It was in my neighborhood. I'm part of the neighborhood. It was down the street from me, 6 blocks. But after accepting the fact that I had to pivot, I got baptized again as an adult. I just wanted to make sure, because God is real. And I even started running marathons. And the whole reason, because of those two, is that there's a lot of points in my journey where there was no light at the end of the tunnel, but God continued to show up every time. It came to a point in November when I was like, God, where you at? Nothing. God, listen, I'm praying up. What's going on? You were hear from me from before. Nothing. And so for me, I was like, oh, okay, I think this is time for me to pivot now and shut things down. But again, since then, 13 marathons, been rebaptized and doing the work in the church as much as possible. We have a faith and entrepreneurship program coming up next month for my church. It's going to be virtual. So that's something we're looking forward to now.
So I mean, we could stop the podcast right there. You gave us a lot of lessons, right? I mean, so I think, in all seriousness, I mean, from a sense of, first it's like jumping out in a leap of faith, starting a business, and then through all the different turmoil, you continue to push through, right? I mean, I think a lot of times we can do certain things in life and expect everything to be smooth, but then as the obstacles come around, we sometimes just fold. So I mean, kudos to starting it, right? I personally remember you starting it, and I remember eating the grilled cheese. So I still want those grilled cheese. I'm putting that out there right now. I'm gonna manifest that.
I
And
receive it.
so Ron, when it comes to being more vulnerable, right? What's the major benefit of that? Because a lot of times, I think for me, like if I'm showing vulnerability, it's like you're putting yourself out there, you're exposing yourself, but at the same time, you need to get the help, so you need to expose yourself in order to get
That's
help,
right.
right? So
Yeah.
thinking about your experience with your first business and showing vulnerability, what are some things that you've learned and how has it been beneficial?
Um, I think when it comes to entrepreneurship, I'm going to say this gently because I was thinking about this when I was running yesterday. Um, I see it, and I'm saying this gently. I see this as creating life, creating and bringing life into the world. You're creating something that you're passionate about, but at the same time, are you taking classes to be a good parent, right? Are you starting a business and learning how to be a good leader? All right. I think a lot of people get into entrepreneurship because they want to be their own boss. They want to do their own thing. But the other side of it that I like to try to expose folks to is that entrepreneurship is more than that. We're actually job creators. In order for that to happen, we need to be able to lead. And I think the key to that is servant leadership. And so that vulnerability is being able to make mistakes, announce them to your squad, because you establish trust that way as well. I think disappointment's going to take place no matter what. And I think the way we treat each other is something we need to think about as well. I think we give our closest friends a lot more pressure, and maybe we can be somewhat unfair to our closest peers when it comes to disappointment versus a complete stranger. And I think that we need to remember that there's going to be a point where we disappoint somebody else, and we will want that type of treatment or response to be filled with a little bit more compassion. And so if we try to remind ourselves that if someone disappoints me or lets me down, how would I want to respond to that? And of course, it's something like your teacher, your pastor is going to say, but it's a real deal. It's like how you show up for folks is going to show up just on the way you treat other people. And so I've learned to be able to how to ask questions, ask for help. We've had some pretty good conversations in all areas of life that we never had before. And the reason why is I feel comfortable with asking you for that insight. And the reason why, the selfish part of it all is I'm smarter. I am not, I surround myself with people that are smarter than me. Everybody that you see me with post, majority of folks post MDK are people that I aspire to be. And I intentionally try to make sure that I'm always inspired and learning, and that is also reciprocated as well. But that vulnerability to me is a strength. It's the same way as building muscles. You lift weights and you physically tear your muscles in order to build muscle. And I think that's part of the journey of being vulnerable. And so when we are disappointed, that is a muscle being torn. All right. It's all about how you act and how you respond once you fall down. Are you complaining? Are you like, yes, embrace the pain. Do not internalize it, but also give yourself a deadline on when are you going to get back up? Because I think the true test is how fast are you going to remain vulnerable after you get knocked down? Because the true test is staying vulnerable as fast as possible in order to continue to grow your muscle. Gold is purified through the hottest flames. All right. And so I'm not telling everybody to go out there and just run around butt naked and just be vulnerable to everybody. That's not what I'm trying to say. But also know that when there are moments of disappointment or you're taking a risky decision, prepare yourself. And there's a thing about getting your ducks in a row before you make a move or before you take a chance on something is preparation and making sure the things that you're looking to do or the people that you have around you, have them check up on you. Let them know what you're thinking about, what your plans are, and build that muscle and let that gold shine.
Yeah. I mean, having the ducks in a row, I mean, I think the way that I could relate to that is, moving to a new city and taking on entrepreneurship full time and knowing what I was getting paid before is nowhere near what I'm making right now. Right. Not in the good way, right?
I,
It's very,
I can talk about it.
so it's a matter of, before jumping into this entrepreneurship is making sure that you have enough funds to do the things that you want to do, that you're talking to your partner or your spouse about the things that you're trying to do, so everyone's on the same page. So I think it's very true that you have to prepare for it. So Ronnie, biggest lesson learned from the first business that did not succeed the way you wanted to?
um, Establish your worst case scenario, put a real number to it, and make sure you establish that before you move forward.
Hmm.
I know that I need to sell at least 100 grilled cheese sandwiches this month, or I'm not going to make rent. If you sold 99, you need to step back and reassess. That is a hard number. I think part of entrepreneurship, we make decisions based off of emotion, and
Yeah.
that's okay. But when you put a number to it, now we're talking reality, we're talking facts. And so that's something that we have to chew on. But I would say the biggest lesson learned is that I kept my head down and I kept focusing on just really sprinting to my $1 million successful grilled cheese business. But I ignored my worst case scenario. And that can be, that can, that can cause some long-term damage. It's like driving on a flat tire, but you're gonna drive anyway. It's not okay. You're gonna have to pull over, it's gonna take some time, get a new tire, but do not, it's not cool. The hustle, the hustle is over glamorized sometimes, where it's like, oh, you gotta sweat it out, you gotta push. No, no. Those are coming from Jeopardy. Those are coming from lottery winners, right? Those are people that are the outliers that are just done it and the timing is right and they're lucky or whatnot. But the folks, the majority of people that are out there chasing the dream, embrace what's the worst thing that can happen. Because the faster you swallow that pill, you make different decisions moving forward.
That's real. That's real. Because I mean, we all can exert a lot of energy and run in place, but if we're not going anywhere, right, there's no type of progress. So I think that's real. Like establishing
Exactly.
those goals and those concrete numbers on the direction that you want to go. So you've had the experience of starting business one. You know, you've learned a lot. You know, you had a lot of lessons learned, and now you've transitioned into youth entrepreneurship, right? So
Yeah.
I think the beauty of it is the fact that you are taking your lessons learned and now teaching the youth about entrepreneurship. So why is youth entrepreneurship so important to you?
Um, I'm laughing because I've always wondered, like, what are people going to think? Like, Ron, why do you teach entrepreneurship when your restaurant failed? And the reality of the situation is, the reason why I'm doing this because I want to make sure the youth don't make the same mistakes I did. And so the reason why I got into youth entrepreneurship, I had a pretty meaningful conversation with my mom about where I really want to be with my future. And 2 years ago is when I realized Flint was going on its fourth year without water. And so me and my mom had a great conversation about not just the access to the water, but what's the long-term effects of the lead poisoning that the children have been drinking for years now in communities like Flint. There's behavioral and learning disabilities that are going to take challenges that are going to take place that are not reversible. And so um, I decided that I know that we have entrepreneurship workshops for adults. I took one before I opened up my restaurant. Um, but I know the motto was it works, but how can we implement this entrepreneurial mindset at a younger age? And I got a book called The Entrepreneur's Manifesto by Steve Mariotti. And he talks about youth entrepreneurship and his journey. And he talks about the entrepreneurial mindset. And so when we have youth that are actually able to take some of the tools that they learned in school and they're able to apply it to something that's meaningful to them, you're going to see higher attendance rates, higher graduation rates, self-esteem, public speaking. And they also, there's another book called Grit by Angela Ducksworth. You'll see students actually focusing on a goal for an extended period of time. Even with those obstacles, they're still passionately focused on them. And so she defines that as grit. And so those are the things that I see that are going to be solutions to world problems. So as far as youth entrepreneurship, I see that there's an opportunity there. I think this is something that can actually change the world. I am 100% convicted that will happen. And I feel like I am going to be part of the reason why as well. That's how convicted I am. And that's also humility speaking too. um, so financial literacy and just being able, and my last piece here is that I'm okay if my students do not open up a business at the end of the program. I more care about them having an understanding that we all work for our last name. And so if a student is graduating high school and they're interviewing for their first job and they do not have work experience, but they know how to read a profit and loss statement or analyze a profit margin, they have something to bring to the table. And I'm looking forward to empowering my students, let them know if you want to go a career route and be an employee, that's all good. If you want to start your business, it's all good, but we all still work for our last names. Um, and also my other piece is not relying on one line of income either. And this year is the year to really expose that a lot of people are out of jobs, are looking for other resources. If we instill multiple streams of income to our kids and financial literacy, we'll also see that they can also invest themselves, have the 9 to 5, but also be able to have a passion project that's creating revenue on their own too, whether it be stocks or starting their own business.
Yeah, I mean, and it's not a, everyone is not desiring to be an entrepreneur, and everyone that is an entrepreneur is not making much money, to tell you the truth. So I think from what you're teaching though is no matter where you are in the spectrum, is the fact that you have the ability and the tools to succeed. You may have this skill set, a hobby, and you can turn that into some profitability. I think the greatest thing that I've seen from your work is that you have these terms that adults are not even familiar with, from profit margin to differential advantage to the business evaluation, which I
Yeah.
think for anybody in learning mathematics and being able to apply that to the real world, it makes the retention a lot higher. So as
Mm-hmm.
parents, or just even as, no, let's say as parents, what are some things we can do to teach our kids about entrepreneurship?
This is awesome. And I've been doing this with my kids the last couple weeks recently. So I have a couple things for you. Um, One is I challenge my kids to go out and make cookies. I tell them to go to the grocery store. I give them a recipe. I tell them to go to the grocery store, and I want them to tell me how much does it cost to make one cookie. So you got family time. We got to see the kids go to a grocery store, pick out the items, look at the items and see what they cost, all the direct expenses, the COGS, cost of goods sold, and then it gets transferred and measured in by ounces, and they get to learn how to use a spreadsheet. They know how to use multiplication and division, and then once they figure out that this recipe calls for 24 cookies, once they divide that whole number by 24, they can see how much one cookie costs. And so now they get to learn how to use Excel sheets and all that. Another project is, what fruit is your business? So we think about I think we assume a lot of businesses and corporations are profitable. A lot of them aren't. But when we're watching like Shark Tank, we're looking at what's your margin on this, what's your margin on that. You hear people say, 50% margin or 80% margin. I'm like, well, okay. Well, we all know if you want to have a business, you have to have expenses. It takes money to run a business. If you were to go to the grocery store and you want to buy an orange, a pineapple, mango, a banana, you can buy the whole unit, but how much of it do you actually eat? Do you eat the whole orange? No, you take the peel off. Do you eat a whole pineapple? No, you take the skin off and the core. So you're paying for the whole pineapple, but you're only eating 60, 70%. Or a pomegranate, you're only eating like 20% of a pomegranate. And that's the cost that comes with businesses, that you have to peel away your bills and your expenses and to enjoy the flesh of the fruit. And that's what we call the profit. And so we have students that when we watch Shark Tank together, we see that their pricing for Bombas socks are 80% profit margin. And then I ask them, okay, what kind of fruit can you eat 80% of? I would say an orange. Once you take the peel off, you got about 80% of the orange left. And so that's another one. And then I have vacation planning. I think it would be cool to give parents give their kids a budget for next year's vacation and let the kids plan their vacation. Give them the spreadsheet, give them the list and the things they want to do, and let them know how to spend $3,000 for a next amount of time. If it's a week or it's 5 days, it depends. A week or 3 days depends on how big the budget is. But can they enjoy and achieve some things that they want to have fun with a budget? And so that's a good way of managing money and financial literacy. Another thing I like to do is Shark Tank. I have shark sessions with my students every now and then. I have a spreadsheet, a table that has the general questions in order to watch any Shark Tank episode. It doesn't matter what it is. if you're able to answer these questions, you can actually have a full conversation with your parents about money, profit margin, and business valuation. So I'll give you a quick example. If somebody comes in and says, "Hey, uh, I want $100,000 for 10% of my business." What is that? What is that person saying? They
Mhm.
think their business is worth $1 million. But once they get through all the negotiations, Shark Tank, Mark Cuban is saying, "Okay, I'll give you $100,000 for 50% of your business." Okay, deal. It's like, okay, wait a second. So this person just got the $100,000, but Mark Cuban actually owns 50% of the business now. How would you respond if you came in somewhere and saying, "Hey, I think I'm worth this much," but someone else's response, I think you're worth less than that. So now you have a whole conversation about vulnerability, and also knowing what's your walk away number. Where is your line on doing business with somebody where you feel like you know a little bit more about if you're going to take the offer or not.
I think it's great because I mean, these kids have a sense of like, I mean, a lot of people watch Shark Tank and they don't understand how what you just said, right? That the company just went from $1 million to $200,000 just because he said he wanted 50% of the company. And I think the beauty of it is that now you have the youth that are just understanding profit margins, understanding how really the economics works, right? Which is a very powerful,
Yeah.
powerful tool. And a lot of things you just said, and as people are listening to this, it's things that they also are not that privy to, right? And
Mm-hmm.
I mean, these are some key terms that are really essential to everyday business, whether you're an entrepreneur or just you're working in another corporation, because you need to understand
Mm-hmm.
the intricacies of everything. So I think from a sense of taking the lessons learned from the first business, and now you're in business number two, how have you positioned this current business for better success?
Again.
I said, as you relate your experience from business number one, right, with the grilled cheese, Mr. Dorsey Kitchen, and now you're doing your youth entrepreneurship. How have you better positioned yourself for success now?
Um, I still run marathons. I do make sure I put my work in the church, and I also stay prayed up, honestly. As far as positioning, I would say that I am riding the silver lining of COVID right now for me to move to Los Angeles. So almost 6 months. I've been here for almost 6 months now from living in Brooklyn for 13 years. Um, with schools being taught virtually, I'm able to teach kids from all over the country. So I have a big seven that my kids that I teach directly, they're all over the country. And then the schools, I can start my day on East Coast time and I end my day with West Coast kids on their after school hours too. So as far as positioning, I'm looking at making sure that I stand by my numbers. I justify my pricing for when schools pay or parents pay for my services. I stand by them and I make sure that I have an understanding that where teachers, program directors, or parents might see hurdles, that I'm actually have solutions for them. And that's kind of goes back to my worst case scenario, that I know I need to at least have this much revenue coming in order for me to continue my mission with teaching. um, Another piece is sharing my story with my students. I had a very meaningful conversation 2 weeks ago with a student. I did a workshop called Shooting Your Shot. It's about pitching and taking on opportunities head on. And someone asked Mr. Johnson, like, how do you deal with rejection?
Mhm.
And I was a high school student, and it was an amazing conversation. And so part of this entrepreneurial education is some of the stuff that's not in the textbook. So it was this time in another class where I just stopped the lesson and I actually engaged with the students, and we just talked about vulnerability, knowing that rejection is temporary, and that it's up to us how fast we want to redeem and get back up from those disappointments. Um, and I'm also making sure this time, I'm making sure that I'm taking a competitive analysis and learning about the other entrepreneurship education platforms that are out there. And I know that I'm more green than some of them, but they also have a team. And so this time I have an awesome advisory board that are my no friends, that if it's a bad idea, they keep me in check. But there is nothing that I do without them touching any of my idea or them blessing it. Because if they're not on board with it, that means I need to go back to the drawing board. And these are people that I've known for years. So I'm making sure that I am staying vulnerable and making sure that I'm asking for help as opposed to asking for help because I need it versus asking for help because I know it's good for the long term. So those are some of the ways.
Yeah, I think those are, I mean, as you just compare the two, right, from like first business to now, right, the things that I've caught, it was around, you've humbled yourself, you're more vulnerable, you have an advisory group that you test out ideas with, you've planned, right? I need to understand that I need X amount of sales or X amount of students in order to reach this target that I want.
That's
So
correct.
I mean, the beauty about it is as we go through life, there's a lot of lessons that are learned, right? But I think the issue is when we are making the same mistakes over and over again, and then nothing's being changed in our behavior, right? You mentioned who moved my cheese earlier, so it's the ability for us to go down our journey, learn, pivot, and then continue to go down our journey, learn and pivot. So I'm
And
glad you mentioned that.
keep a sense of humor because it is very comfortable. It is very comforting to focus on problems. It is very comforting to know that what's the point anyway? I'm not going to win. And you don't want to go out there again. You just sit on the sidelines. Continue to give yourself grace. Embrace the hard times, let it know it's real, but put a stamp on it. There is a time where it's time to get that nasty, dirty blanket of depression off and get back up because your blessing that can't is waiting for you around the corner. But it does take a sense of humor and a lot of patience to embrace that idea. Otherwise, I'm just talking mess right now. But I think the level of conviction is really going to open up doors for things that we see that we want for ourselves. I think once we pursue that with full conviction is actually going to expose us to bigger things that we never imagined. And I'm only speaking from my personal experience.
So we've talked about many of the lessons learned, right? So I'm going to flip the script and say, what has been the best part about your entrepreneurial journey?
My best part about my entrepreneurial journey, I honestly 2020 has been amazing for me. Amazing for me. So the reason why I'm out here is because I got my program funded by a nonprofit. I went from teaching at one school to teaching at to six all over in 1 month. And so that started in June, and I also tagged on 3 more schools since then too. With all that being said, I had my 2020 goals. I listed off back in 2019. I made my 2020 goals, and one of them was to start a summer camp. And the group that I was going to partner with, it fell through because of COVID. So I'm like, ah. But now that I can end up in LA and I have all this free time because I'm only teaching like only here and there for the summer, I was like, wait a second, I have bandwidth right now. I know I'm raising money for raising money for Flint, Michigan by running these races. And so I was like, you know what? Everyone who donated money to my GoFundMe, I'm gonna just use that money and teach kids entrepreneurship. And so I started my own summer camp July 1st, July 1st. And I end up starting from 68 kids, but now I have 7 solid kids now. They've been rocking with me since July 1st. They could break down a business valuation, profit margin. They can watch any Shark Tank episode and they can pitch you a business, and they are killer on these online game Kahoot games that I've made for them. So my biggest piece, the thing I'm proud of the most, are my big 7, which is Maya, Shruti, Righteous, Alexandria, Kaden, Brooklyn, Deanna, and they're all over the country. And the one thing I'll say to that is because of because of that, this has exposed me to know that I have multiple lines of revenue because I had to embrace the fact that if I'm teaching after school programming, schools are still trying to figure out what to do with their kids. So after school is not really top of their priority list. And so that means I cannot depend on schools while they're trying to figure out what to do with their kids. And so while I am still pushing my school relationships, this summer camp has actually exposed me to say, I can reach out to kids, parents and kids directly without the boundaries of school. So some days I'm teaching only the students in that school. But the kids that I work with directly, they're from all over the country and they get to collaborate with each other. They never met each other and they get to come up with their own businesses on their own and they work with me directly. And so that's been a great experience. So I'm looking forward to pouring more into reaching out to parents and kids directly that I can work with without them worrying about being within school boundaries and that they can be in different grades and actually be able to work with other kids from other parts of the country.
Dope, real dope. You mentioned Big Seven a couple of times during this conversation. What exactly is Big Seven?
So this is my 7 students. I have a student in Minnesota, Boston, 2 in Atlanta, Southfield, Ann Arbor, and Harlem.
Okay, so
So
so you
those are
so
all
you
my
you really
kids.
taking this national, right? So like you're across.
I'm saying it. I'm claiming it. I'm waiting for next year. I want to say global soon. I'm sure there's gonna be some kids out there that are international that can see some value in learning this. But those are my big 7. But these kids, they're ready to go. They will be successful in anything that they do. And I
Love
say
it.
that the reason why is because a lot of the students that I teach through the school partnerships, they're there because they kind of have to be because it's part of the school.
They want to.
These these beasts are hungry. They show up every week and they want more classes and they do it on their own. And my youngest person is a 4th grader and she is punching above her weight class just to see it authentically learning and absorbing all this information. I'm just very proud of them. That's my big
I think,
7.
and then with your Big Seven, the greatest thing about it is that I'm pretty sure these 7 students provide you with so much energy to keep going because you see what the potential looks like, right? And I go ahead.
And they tell me when I'm messing up. They're like,
Right.
Mr. Ron, what are you doing?
Yo, but I relate that to because I'm a big advocate that success breeds success. So the fact that you're putting in all this hard work, but then seeing these students really flourish in the things that they're doing continues to make you do more. So I mean, my question for you too is around. I mean, you came to Los Angeles, received that contract. Congrats on that. But then you continue to tell yourself, what else can I do? Would you relate that to what you learned from the first business about not being complacent and continue to push forward and the things that you need to do?
I guess I never thought about it that way, but I think that is what I've been saying this whole time. You just said it better than I did. But yeah, I would say that I have the time, I have the bandwidth. I'm looking at my calendar and I look at about the hours that I actually teach. Like a lot of my work is already done as far as curriculum building. I can do curriculum all day long, but excuse me, a lot of the time, my time is spent really doing live sessions, and I can do live sessions all day long now because everything's virtual. I do want to say one thing to make sure, to make it very transparent and to give my flowers where they belong, is that from my big 7, not all of them paid for, could afford or were able to pay for the program. My friends and my peers see the work that I'm doing. Vulnerability. I'm always letting people know what I'm working on. My friends know that I'm working on it. I'm getting kids together and I'm teaching them. A majority of them are paid for because my friends paid for them. A majority of my students are actually sponsored by people that they've never met yet. They're going to meet them at the end of the month, at the end of December. But that is something that's very important that I wanted to share too, that these kids are actually supported by the village and they don't even know who they are yet.
That's wonderful. I think it's a wonderful receive funding and knowing that it's going to be, it's tenfold with the type of returns that it's going to get. So love that
Exactly.
concept. The last thing I want to touch on is because you've referenced it a couple of times, is that you're running these marathons to be able to increase the awareness of what's happening in Flint, Michigan. And what's the, like, where are you at today with that? How is the awareness coming along? Just give us a quick tidbit about that.
I'm gonna keep it 100 with you. I, I've been in Flint. I can't land a meeting in Flint. I've been knocking on doors. There is somebody out there. His name is Peter Deppy. He is the owner of Commute, and he has an awesome micro mobility business out there where they're actually charging any type of e-scooter or e-bike that locks up automatically too. So in LA, you're familiar. We have these Lime scooters that are just laying around all over the sidewalks everywhere. With his technology, is that those Lime scooters can actually, they're dockless scooters. He's actually creating the device that goes on the scooter that you can lock into the hub, and that way it can help charge and do all work. So he allowed me to interview him and take a tour through his business. As far as other entrepreneurship programs in Flint, I'm still knocking on doors. I'm not getting too many catches, but for me, this has been my bait in order for me to get across the country. So I'm not hitting a home run in Flint right now, but I'm hitting a home run in 6 other states right now. So I'll take that.
Yeah, and you have to start from somewhere. Along
Exactly.
along that line, right? When we think about, you mentioned this, right? Being able to, deal with rejection and keep going. And I'll start with myself to give you some time to think about, like what's some of the rejections that you've been able to overcome. But for my very first business with Project Sincere and working with students, knocking on doors and schools just looking at us crazy, like, you want to charge how much, to being able to do another business currently right now with Dream Big, right? So there's us trying to do events and people are just like, not now. There's us trying to get sponsors for this very podcast and people are like, not now. But I mean, it's the ability to just continue to keep pushing and tricking your mind that, hey, what you're doing is right. Because
Mm-hmm.
I'm a testament where at times it could be deflating, where it's just like, dang, like, is it right? So I think for you, like, how have you been able to deal with the rejection for the things that you're doing to continue to push forward?
Um, Yeah, so I would say that 2019 was a very difficult year for me. When I look back on 2019, I did like I wrote it, I wrote down my moments of rejection. I added up over 36 moments of rejection where being let go, being fired, saying that you're not a good fit here, being rejected by girls, like you name it. I got the rejection stamp on it, you know. Um, I would say that because of those moments of rejection, it allowed me to be more focused on where my direction needs to be. And so when I say that is, I use the example of pruning. So I have some basil in my kitchen, but pruning is an example, is a practice in gardening where you clip off dead branches and leaves from the plant or the tree or the bush, whatever it is. And the reason why you chip them off, you cut them off, is because those dead branches, they take nutrients away from the branches that need the fruit. And so um, you clip them away so more nutrients supersede and go directly to those branches and those leaves. And so you get healthier fruit begins to grow. Does that make sense? And so when we think about where we spend our time, who we spend our time with, is there like, I used to have a drinking friends. I don't have drinking friends. Like I don't have people that I go out and just do in
Drink with.
shenanigans. Yeah, I don't. Everybody that I hang with and that I in my circle are people that I build or that I am building. And we're doing that together because that's the type of connection, that's the type of people I want to be around. With all that being said, during 2019, I think God had went to town with his shears and chopped me up to like maybe 2 branches left. All right. And that was straight up youth entrepreneurship. And so, how have I been dealing with rejection? Because of 2019, my sense of humor for 2020, because I've been claiming 2020 since November last year. And now that I'm looking at 2020, it's a hot mess. But I will say, for those that I have been connecting with, this is the best year ever for a lot of people. And I want them to say it out loud too, and be able to say it with encouragement and compassion, because a lot of things can change overnight, just like that. And there's a lot of people that are not inspired, that are not having the best year ever. But that does not mean you cannot thrive in other areas of your life. And so those moments of rejection, I feel like, are a pruning process for me, because now I am growing more fruit and my branches are stronger. And because of that, I'm more secure and I'm more confident that I'm in the direction that I need to be. But at the moment, those moments of rejection in 2019, God does not have a pain threshold. He was ripping my branches off. He was cutting them things off, and it's hurt. It was so hurtful. But now when I look at 2020 and I look at my wins now versus my rejections, I am so highly favored and prayed up right now that I've become so much fruitful because of those rejections. And again, gold is purified through the hottest flames.
And to your example before, like you cannot build muscle without tearing it apart, right? So I think that, and I think what's been great from what you said too is that you actually reflected on like these different rejection incidents that has happened right in 2019,
Yeah.
because it's very easy for us, very easy for myself to just let it happen, put it back there, say, oh, okay, it didn't really happen, it wasn't really a big deal. But then kind of going around to that whole learning process, right? Being able to say, okay, what can I learn from this? Build it up.
And that's that vulnerability part. I was like, let me address this moment that I think stinks. We can bury it and we can internalize and bury it and try to ignore it. But like, how about we open this up a little bit, tie it
Unpack it.
up in a plastic bag, and then throw it away afterwards. You know what I mean? But let's sort through all this thing first, because at the end of the day, we can just throw it in the back, but it's going to stink eventually. So how about we take care of it now, look in there, see what we can do, and the parts that, learn about the parts that we can fix, and everything else, then we can throw it away and move on, because that's what it takes to reflect. And also, we got to remember, rejection is temporary. It is temporary. It's all up to you on how long you want to dwell on the problem, though, and like how well do you how kind are you being to yourself too?
Rejection is temporary, but if you try to hide that doo-doo, that's permanent.
Yes, yeah, it's gonna stink.
It's
It's
gonna
gonna
stink.
stink.
All right, Roddy. I have a lightning round for you, right? So it's just it's the first thing that comes to your head. All right, ready? All right. Favorite day of the week?
Mondays.
Monday. All right. Running or dancing?
Oh, that's good. Dancing. That was a good one. You know
All
me
right.
too
All
well.
right.
That's dancing.
New York or Los Angeles?
New York, Brooklyn.
All right. Ask for permission or beg for forgiveness?
Beg for forgiveness. We're
All
talking about
right.
entrepreneurship. In the context of entrepreneurship, beg for forgiveness.
All right. All right. So right, this has been great. This has been a lot of lessons learned from just listening to you. So I appreciate that. But before we let you go, I want to leave you with some final words of encouragement for the listeners.
Who we are today is a collection of decisions that we made yesterday. Crossing the street, brushing our teeth, whatever we decided yesterday is why we are here today. And so I want to make sure that we can actually budget in time for our future selves that are I call it Ronnie. I'm Ronnie 5.0 at this point, maybe 6.0, six stacks, 6,000. It's up to you. But I got to think about Ronnie 8.0, and I know there's going to be some iterations that's going to take place, and making sure that I'm budgeting time for that person. And so one of the things that I'm going to relay to folks is that there's 168 hours in a week. All right. If we were to have a full-time job, that's 40 hours. It's 8 hours times 5 days a week. If we have a full night's rest, that's 8 hours times 7 days, that's 56. If we were to calculate commuting every single day, running errands, eating dinner, breakfast, lunch, and dinner, that's 3 hours times seven, that's 21 hours. If we were to invest in ourselves 2 hours a day by reading or running, that's 14 hours. At the end of your week, you still have 37 hours remaining in your week. That is 5.29 hours a day. So I want to encourage you guys to understand that you really own your time once you cut out all the BS, all right? And on a full night's rest, you can literally have more than a part-time job, right? This is just an example. There's people that have kids and family. It changes, but you still have a chunk of change where you can actually have a full night's rest, a full-time job, and invest in yourself on your schedule. And for those that are out there that are looking to potentially quit their job in order to pursue their job full-time, I would highly suggest you to analyze and put a number to what that means or how much money you need to generate in order for it to happen. It said that in Adam West's book, The Originals, that those that are more risk adverse are 33% more likely to succeed than the ones that are run and jump. We hear a lot of people that are run and jumpers. Those are the lottery winners. All right. Let's not, no discount to them, but let's not put their journey and use that as a template on what we measure success to be. So be kind to yourself, take advantage of your time, and have an amazing sense of humor and patience, and stay vulnerable at all times.
Ladies and gentlemen, you heard it from Ron John himself. Be kind to yourself. Time, right? Control your time. Be vulnerable and have a sense of humor. Those are great things to live by. So, Ron, I want to thank you for your time and for the wonderful, wonderful words you've left us with.
Sean, listen, you have been doing great, great work. I've been listening to your podcast since the very beginning. And I don't know if people know that you are a one-man show, and then watching you evolve and the work that you're doing and being an evangelist to other people and announcing it to the entire world, you are a symbol of what the American dream is, what people need to strive, and also people that are leading a life of faith. Your work, it shows and it speaks volumes. My life is better because of the work that you do. And so I want to make sure that you just encourage you. You are prayed on. You are prayed up from over here. Thank you for the work that you're doing and the quality of it and the people you brought and to share your platform with. It does change the world, and my life is better because of it.
Thank you. That means extremely. It means a lot. So I appreciate the kind words. I'm definitely gonna take it to heart, and I'm gonna replay it whenever I'm like, should I be doing this still? So no, it's like your big seven, right? So I appreciate the friendship and appreciate the kind words, Ron.
Yes, sir.
Please remember to subscribe, like, and comment below.